The unstoppable power of Exodia, the Forbidden One. An interesting look at gimmick puppets, and it would also appear that the Fiend Smith 2-card caveman piles have begun. Make sure you guys smash the living crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more Oz content. Caveman. Exodia. So basically, for those of you that have been looking at Infinite Forbidden and you're super excited, well, Exodia got an entire arsenal of new tools to not only basically turn this deck into something a little bit more crazy, but we now have an actual fusion boss monster of Exodia that basically works in a completely different way than what we're used to seeing with Exodia. Personally, I think this card is pretty bonkers because it has a permanent attack gain, because once per turn, if it battles, it gains attack equal to your current life points. Check. And then once per turn, you have a spell and trap negate. But you lose 1,000 life points during each of your standby phases. 8 turns is about the best you're going to have with this. But I mean, it's only going to take 2-3 turns for this thing to stack up 8,000, 15,000, 21,000, and your opponent's just like, oh, okay, well, there's nothing really I can do about this, just a snowball of advantage, and you're out here generating some pretty stupid stuff with, the Wedju, the Caveman, all the little Millennium extenders that your deck has, while you're slowly gathering, your Exodia win condition out here while sitting on, your boss monster. It's a gimmick deck, I'm not going to lie to you, but gimmicks do have a chance to have fun, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to use the unbridled power of Exodia, the Forbidden One, to bring down the wrath on your opponent. Yeah, this is so cheesy. Also, this is a spellcaster, fun fact, so you can technically Secret Village lock your opponent with this. Yay! Isn't that so fun to know about? And knowledge is power. And of course, we are rolling out the Azarune, because we are playing the solo hat hair out here. Yep. This is everything that I always wanted in my Yu-Gi-Ohs. Yay! Alright, next up is gimmick puppets. Now, most of our gimmick puppet stuff is extremely, extremely low rarity. Which means if you already had the rest of the gimmick puppet stuff, like you had the puppets, the strings, and, maybe the slightly more expensive stuff, like, the scissor arms, this now opens up the door to you to be able to play one of those little saucy decks called the FTK. Now, this version of the deck is actually playing something really, really cool. They've actually chosen to play the prohibitions in here. Now, you could even go so far to maybe consider exchanging this to get the hand knowledge from your opponent, but I don't necessarily think that you want to risk it. Prohibition, at the time of whatever your hand is going to be, I think is going to be the hand trap you're going to have to call. If you're worried about like a draw and lockbird, okay, well, we can go ahead and call that. This deck, I think, strictly works on the premise of you need to be able to go first to a thing. Also, Prohibition does give you some options. I can't even say that this gives you options to go second, because remember, cards already on the field are not affected by this, and that also includes face downs based on Prohibition's errata. So if you're strictly going second with this, you're going to have to rely on some heavy hand traps, and 9 of them's about all you're working with here to try to get those maximized numbers. So it feels like it's a lot of commitment to go first or bust with this deck, but you have a lot more side decking down here, and technically if you got to go second, you can just board in evenlies and wrench your opponent so that you can actually get the chance to do your thing. But classically, outside of that, it is a new idea. It does, if this is something that you want to mess around with, please do give it a shot. Honestly, that's what you're here for. You're here for the chance to see these ideas and see what players are doing. Also, Disaster Leo getting the chance to resolve is disgusting. Alright, next up here, we have the Caveman that awoke from 1,000 years. Actually, this is just stick 2 monsters together and go. Literally, that's what the strategy was. I was reading the tournament report for this, and the duelist was like, this might not be the most optimized build of this by any stretch of the imagination, but they were like, it gets the job done on a localized environment. I mean, you've already got triple Fiendsmith. Like, you're good to go. Everything that you needed in the deck is just that. Like, your deck just has to full Fiendsmith combo. You know, one of your Kashtira monsters, you know, we have the Kashtira package built into this, so you know you're already getting to the stupid stuff with this. Tour Guide into Sangan is full combo because congratulations, you have the moon of the closed sky, or closed sky, you're good to go. And then to top things off, you know, now you're getting a hand trap pulled off of the Sangan to use for the next turn, which is stupid in and in itself, all right? Like, you got to think about this. You're getting inherent advantage off of this for this. You can pay 4K life here to get these on the field too, because you know caveman into the golem is always going to be a very classic thing. You could test the Millennium Ankh with this. It also depends on how much of this package you want to play, because this deck, or this engine, is pretty good at getting, you know, dudes on the field so that you can make closed sky and do your thing. Also, I do feel bad for when the Requiem does get ashed. Like, I kind of feel like if you lose your Requiem here, like, you're just kind of going back to the Stone Ages, quite literally, actually, out here. But in terms of a fun tier 1 idea, I think this is fine. I think we're going to see a lot more piles like this. Obviously, for a localized level, maybe into a regional level, people will explore options like this, because the OCG did this in the very early stages. It's where I think a lot of these ideas came from out here. So, fun stuff. Next up here, heroes. Now, I'm going to tell you this. Rumor has it that there is a Fiendsmith variation of heroes running off somewhere out there in the distance. Like, I don't know if it has been perfected yet. I don't know if it is like the best variation of the deck, but I'm telling you, it does exist, and you should look into it. But for those of you that are like, oh man, I don't want to run out and get Fiendsmith cards, like, that's too much money. Well, that's fine. You have a regular version of Heroes here that actually was successful out of its event. So the fact that, hey, you can actually still stick on Old Reliable out here and still get the chance to do things is good. All right, it's that old consistency that works. And also, you saw the mouse on the Book of Eclipse here. The fact that Book of Eclipse is just kind of returned back into the format here as an option to clear off extremely large fields. So say your opponent's trying to put you into a bad position. Well, we can use the Book of Eclipse to kind of alleviate all of that BS so that you're like, oh, okay, this is fine. You know, the book offsets any real damage you could have. I mean, your board breaker cards are all right here. Like, if you're dealing with some crazy stuff, I feel like both of these can get the job done for you. And whatnot, Mr. Plasma here also is another little friend that you can call up and have him assist you along the way. Outside of that, I think everything in this is kind of standard. This is a little cute of an option, you know, being able to drop down the malicious so, you know, you can continue on along with your day. Seems good to me. I'll be honest with you, it's still heroes. You've got about 9,000 problems, and sometimes consistency is a big issue for this deck. At least in my personal opinion, that's how I feel when I'm looking at this about 90% of the time. Next up here, we have a showcase of Mimighoul. I've been watching a lot of the Mimighoul Duelist and just trying to see the options that they've been coming up with. I've not seen any successful runs out here, but they are starting to cook up some very interesting stuff, especially with the Vernal Sith stuff here. You know, all of your little guys being Earth in combination with the Vernal Sith stuff just ensures a lot of searchability along the way. Now, I do see we are doing a ninja build for this. It was not something that I had considered at all, but, you know, the ninjutsu book here, getting you the chance to get into the Dancing Leaves, kind of, you know, for the free set, that kind of changes my opinion on a couple of things. Of course, one armor ninja with the one Maizen, and then of course a lot of these extra decks, I can tell you, are going to be dedicated to the turbo runs for Zeus. Like, still sticking two monsters together into a Fucho or an assembled Nightingale and then having your opponent have to deal with that is a huge issue, and a lot of decks cannot handle that pressure that you're putting on them. So that's a pretty major thing to think about, is, you know, how much advantage can, you know, we get with with these cards. I also see High Tech Talents, Hello Thrust. We also have the double Pinkertops down here to kind of give us a fighting chance to go second. But the way that this Mimighoul archetype has been just set up here, the Dungeon Master himself, there are so many cool ideas that you can play around with this. I know it's not a tier 1 deck, but for the first time in a while, you know, Ashen had the art going for it, but people are genuinely in love with what this deck is attempting to do, and that's a good thing. So what do you guys think about your interesting deck list today? Please leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think, and I will see your beautiful faces back here in a day, guys. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.